we're back in after hours here, and I did not ask Maury one of the most critical questions that I think absolutely has to be answered, right? So get ready, Maury.
Okay.
Talent acquisition professionals, recruiters, employer branding specialists, what is one of the biggest mistakes that they make when it comes to producing video, creating video, and then most importantly, storing that video after it's created?
It's going to be a long answer.
I got time.
Okay. I'll start with the biggest mistake I think they make is, and I see this all the time, is people try to make a recruiting video, one generic recruiting video with beauty shots of the building. You know, they bring the drone in and they show headquarters. Please
I
don't.
love those videos.
Oh, dear.
I want a drone.
I want a drone, but not to take beauty shots of buildings. And unfortunately, what they produce is a video that doesn't really communicate any vital information to anybody. It's way too generic. The kind of information that a new college grad going into a sales management program needs versus someone from your internal audit team versus someone from your product marketing team, their information needs are so different that you can't possibly create one generic video that's going to answer any of those questions generically. And the reality is people don't watch them. So the first piece, and then they spend tons and tons of money doing this, which is really hard to see because with far fewer resources, far less money, you could produce a lot more productive videos. So they try to do this big, you know, sort of glamour piece. Then they put it on their website, on their corporate career site, and they think it's getting views, and it's not.
Yeah.
The way video really attracts people is they actually see it. And by the time someone gets to your website, they've already heard of your company. They're already considering you for a position. That's why they're on your career website. It's a little bit like spending your advertising dollars on your cash register. Like they've shown up your website. They're already there. Now, granted, they don't all convert, but that's not attracting new potential candidates for you. It's not expanding your pool at all if you're putting it on your website. The way you expand your funnel is to get the video places where their eyeballs are already looking. So the career site is the last place. It might be a nice to have. A lot of research says nobody really watches the videos on career sites, but they spend a whole lot of money and then they basically mothball the video.
So the first thing you mentioned was and not that you can't be doing this with cell phones and things like that, production value. You can have high production value and still do it on a cell phone. In fact, almost all my videos are done on cell phones. Yeah. This one, I've got two different cameras. This one is done on cell phone, and this one is done on a Brio. So they're both 1080p.
Uh-huh.
They both have excellent audio quality. So the production value doesn't really matter.
Right.
What the next part was the messaging piece, right? So what kind of message is a company sending when they're using the drone, they're using all kinds of, you know, panoramic views and things like that? They're really not telling and selling the story from an explicit, they're showing an implicit, right? Way of displaying this messaging.
Right. Even when they do employee testimonials, and let's assume they don't script people. I see that happen all the time. People are scripted.
Yeah.
And it's dreadful. It's just dreadful. You can tell when people are reading. I like to count the number of adjectives before the noun. You know, seven's the record so far. People don't speak that way normally. And it
Right.
sounds so forced and so phony that it actually detracts from the message. But the other piece is, even if you let people speak spontaneously, and let's even assume you capture some great content, they say something unique about the organization, the research tells us that candidates aren't interested in random employee testimonials. If you're going to work in the Chicago office of an organization, you really don't want to sit and listen to Anna from the San Diego office talk about, you know, her experience, because you're never going to meet Anna. She's never going to be part of your world. It's a completely random piece of information. That's a big mistake when you do these kind of general things. Candidates are very specific. If a job comes across my radar screen, I'm going to say, does this job make sense to me? Is this the right level? Is this a good career move for me? I'm really honed in on, does this make sense for me? And in this market, that's what job seekers are doing. It's not like, oh God, I need a job anywhere. Just, find me something. It's, no, I've got options here. I want to find something that makes sense from a career standpoint. So if the information doesn't help me determine that, it's just clutter. It's just
So it has
noise
to
in my
be
environment.
contextualized, and it has to be relevant to the listener. So if you're hiring for a manufacturing product line engineer, you should probably have a bunch of product line engineers on the video as a testimonial, or their manager, let's say, and probably not have a software engineer pitching it doesn't make sense, right? There's too much of a chasm there to be crossed for a candidate.
Right. And let me just jump in. We have people all the time say, oh, we could never put our software engineers on video. Have you seen them? And yeah, I've seen a lot of software engineers. I'm related to a couple of them. But I say all
You
the
were
time,
one.
yeah, I am one. But I say all the time, people recognize their tribe. And, your software engineer may not look like the kind of person that you'd be comfortable on a team with or that you hang with. But for another software engineer, they went to school with people who, look like that, the bed head, the shirt that's never been pressed. And I say that fondly, loving many software engineers. But people do recognize their tribe. And when they hear somebody who's a good software engineer talk about the technology they're using or the kinds of things they're building or the kinds of things they're solving, that lights up the right kind of person. The individual speaking may not be as charismatic. They may not be as verbose as some of us who do this more for a living do it.
Or eloquent.
Right, but it's the right match. And that's what you're going for. You're going for that kind of communication. So don't look at your, any group, internal audit. Oh my heavens, they're not, going to be, our salespeople maybe, but the rest of the organization, we could never put them on camera. Stop. That's a kind of bias that really gets in the way of finding people who are qualified for the job. You're not looking for, talking heads. You're looking for people who have that competency that you want to hire for.
All right, so here's one of the more difficult questions. AI bias has been taking, foothold. Obviously, video has a huge potential to increase bias inside that recruiting process. How do you think that video can really help a company overcome bias?
Well, it depends. If you're using video for interviewing, which we don't do the video interview piece at all, and there are algorithms there, and I have my issues with, I want to make sure that people look at the base data if they're doing video interviewing and evaluating that. I get concerned when I hear about algorithms that are looking at eye contact. And if someone doesn't maintain eye contact, they're deemed as not as honest. And I look at, man, you have someone from a traditional Asian household where maintaining eye contact is often a sign of arrogance or disobedience. I really worry about taking such mainstream white male behaviors and applying that to other people. But that's a whole different issue with recruiting, with interviewing. When I look at video, because you can create purpose-driven video and you can democratize it. Now it's not, well, gee, we can only put 3 people in our video because we only have a budget of $20,000 or whatever. When you can have all of your software engineers and all of your manufacturing people and all of your folks making video, you get to show the organization as it really is. We're working right now with New York Presbyterian, one of my favorite clients, which has really wonderful diversity. And you go through and you look at those videos and you just see everything. It's really wonderful when you start to look at the body of work there to understand that when you're doing snippets of lots of different people, you get to show lots of different people and folks can relate to all kinds of different folks. So I think video is really an opportunity, particularly when you can produce it very inexpensively and very broadly. You can actually show more of your real organization.
That's exactly it. So there's 2 schools of thought. There's companies out there that are actually proliferating the idea that they should be redacting information off of resumes. They should never be using video, that they need to wait until the hiring manager actually face-to-face interviews the candidate before any of that information is released. And I'm like, all you're doing is covering this up. You're putting a blanket on top of this bias issue, diversity, inclusion, military, whatever, until the candidate meets face to face for the hiring manager. And that's, in my opinion, that's a completely wrong way. If you were to actually pull back the curtains a lot more and provide a lot more transparency into the organization, I think you're going to solve your diversity, inclusion, and military hiring issues a lot faster. And you can do that with video. Be upfront about what your issues are. People don't like putting blankets on top of redaction. Bad way. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, and let me add another piece. We've done some research, particularly with women and people of color, to say, how are you going to respond if the hiring manager is a white male? Is this a negative to you? And the answer we've gotten back is, I don't have to work for another woman or another person of color. I just need to know that my boss is not a monster. I just need to know the person I'm working for is going to be respectful of me. It's going to be supportive of my career. It's going to be somebody that I can work for and work for comfortably. So showing the hiring manager.
I want to be clear, though, that white men are not the only ones that are showing bias in the recruiting process.
Oh, sure. But what we hear from clients is, gee, we can't put video out there because, we're a snow cone. The top is all white and often male. So we can't put our people on video because we don't have enough people of color. And that's going to, and so that's going to discourage people of color from applying to us. It's going to be a negative. And that's not necessarily true. If you put a hiring manager out there, and even if and I'm not assuming the hiring manager is biased, I'm hoping the hiring manager isn't, but if the hiring manager is white and male, that is what it is. What hopefully you can do is put a hiring manager out there who comes across as a genuine person who is looking for talent and will be supportive of talent. And that's not necessarily a negative to women or people of color.
Completely agree.
It's taking the blanket off and saying, hey, I'm looking to hire. If you're excited about these kinds of technology, you're excited about these kinds of challenges, I'd love to talk to you. That's inviting to anybody, regardless of who the speaker is.
Absolutely. All right, I think we're going to close it out there. That's the after hours show right there.
Okay.
Those were two hard questions. Do you have any last question or last thoughts about Amplify, and where can people go? Can they get a demo, or what can they do? Where should they go?
Yep, they should go to sparkstart.com/amplify, and they can request a demo there. They can reach out for more information. I'm always happy to talk to folks about it. Awesome.
And I will put a link in the description. I'll also put a link to Maury's contact information on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So I assume you're open to connections on LinkedIn? Absolutely. All right, Maury, thank you so much. I'd love to have you back on. Quick testimonial. What'd you think of today's presentation?
Oh, I thought it was great fun. It was a great conversation. Love doing it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.